Well, this gives me an idea. Hey there, hobby friends. I'm Jared, and this is Caffeinated Miniatures. Thanks for hanging out with me today. So recently I was at my parents' house and found this old Blood Bowl companion book. And I have absolutely no idea why I had it, or where I picked it up. But I am sure happy I did. Looking at some of these old derpy-ass models, I mean, look at this one. Really? It gave me a big ol' kick of nostalgia, reminding me of some of the paint schemes from 3rd edition Blood Bowl that I remember poorly attempting when I was a kid. Specifically, I remember the orange armored orcs, which gave me some inspiration for the Black Orc team from the 2nd season box set. So I grabbed one of the Black Orcs, primed it up in black, and set off. Even though I was painting a relatively vibrant color scheme, I wanted to keep it slightly muted, which the black primer would help with. Also, I find that black helps me keep the end product more readable. I can keep dark lines between colors without the added extra step of black lining at the end. Starting with the skin, I mixed Vallejo deep green with purple, looking to create a desaturated purpley blue-green color for the shadows. Keeping the darkest recesses black, I began applying this to the model. In order to smooth the transition and slightly tint the black recesses, I thinned this down and glazed it into those transitions. Then, following this pattern of layer, then glaze, I repeated this process with more deep green mixed in. Then straight deep green, decreasing the area covered with each layer. After adding some sunny skin tone to the deep green, I stippled in some texture, looking to create a little more interest to the larger areas of skin. On the face, I added an additional layer, increasing the amount of sunny skin tone in the mix. Then a final layer of fairly highly thinned down sunny skin tone, creating some orky freckles on the top of the head. After sitting with the skin for a minute, I decided to add a little more purple to the shadows. So I thinned down some violet ink and glazed it into some of the darker areas, like under the arms and the back of the head. Just creating a little more variation and depth of color. Because the pants are underneath the armor in some spots, they'd have been tough to paint without hitting the armor, so I tackled them next. I really wanted to lean into their kind of tattered appearance, so I tried to go for an open, coarse woven fabric look. Starting with a mix of Vallejo mahogany brown and medium flesh tone, I used quick, sketchy lines to start building the volumes, leaving the deepest recesses black. Then I repeated this process, covering slightly less area each time with straight medium flesh tone, finishing with a mix of medium flesh tone and ivory. Because the pants were kind of a peripheral element, I really didn't spend too much time on them. Next up, some 90's inspired orange E armor. Now the colors I remember from like 90's, Warhammer, and Blood Bowl were super vibrant and a little bit cartoony, which if I'm honest, I kind of love. It matched those models of the time perfectly. However, to my eye, it really doesn't quite match the current sculpts for Blood Bowl, so I drew inspiration from that 90's orange armor, but just needed to tone it down a touch. So I began by mixing some black into Vallejo Bright Orange, aiming for a desaturated, dark, vaguely grungy orange shadow tone. Then followed the process I had used for the Ogre's purple armor. I covered most of the armor with this shadow color, leaving the darkest reflections and recesses fully black. As I was going for a metallic look, these very dark shadows were necessary. I then aggressively thinned down. Who wrote this? Aggressively thinned down? It sounds like I was in some sort of physical altercation with my wet palette. I thinned it into a glaze. Using that glaze to ease the transition and slightly color the black areas. Once I was fairly happy with the placement of light, I began building the highlights by mixing in more bright orange. Then pure bright orange. To push those highlights further, I mixed some ice yellow into those highlights. Finally, adding some ivory to the mix for the brightest points. Then, to get a little more depth of color and to unify the layers a bit more, I thinned down some Gryph-hound orange and glazed it across the armor surfaces. And finished up by adding some scratches with ice yellow to make the armor feel a little more Blood Bowl-y. Feeling fairly happy with the orange armor, I just had a few more details to finish up. For the leather straps and gloves, I started with Vallejo Mahogany Brown. I thought that deep red, purple tone worked well with the green and orange on the model already. Once again employing scratchy, sketchy brushstrokes, built the volumes with a mix of mahogany brown and sunny skin tone, adding more sunny skin tone as I covered drastically less surface. Finally, to add some more depth and variation to the shadows, I glazed in a mix of brown and black ink, and called that leather done. Recently, I've been trying to wrap up small details on the model with paints that I already have on the wet palette. Of course, I threw all of that completely out the window with all the buckles on this guy. I grabbed Vallejo Dark Prussian Blue and mixed it with black and cold white to create a desaturated, almost purple blue. Then slapped on a couple more layers of light by adding more cold white. I wasn't too fussed about them, just threw enough paint at them so they didn't catch the eye. Before I stuck this bruiser down to their base, I went back to the elbows. I'd previously tried adding some color to them, but just wasn't happy with the result. So I started playing with colors already on the model, and fell on a nice muted reddy pink by mixing mahogany brown with ivory and black. Dragging thin lines across the skin with this color and subsequently with more ivory in the mix, gave those elbows a dry, beat up look that I was kinda happy with. And there you have it, my take on a kind of old school paint scheme. I gotta tell you, this book has made me want to find some old metal miniatures and paint them up. Maybe something from old Warhammer fantasy. Who knows? Maybe I'll come across something that gets the old juices flowing. Anyways, if you made it this far, you are an absolute legend. Consider supporting the channel by hitting that like button to appease the almighty internet gods. If you want to be an ultimate champion, then subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so YouTube lets you know the next time I upload a video. And as always, you are awesome, and I'll see you in the next one. What am I doing with my hands?